Hey, I'm a mechanical engineer and I made this shirt. Today I'll be showing you guys how you can screen print your own t-shirts like this one. Now, although this is a relatively simple and inexpensive process, it does take some time and some patience, but as long as you're willing to put in the effort, it's well worth it. And one other thing before we get started, I am officially selling these nerdly amazing t-shirts, so if you'd like to pick one up, there's a link in the description below. But with all that being said, without any further ado, let's get started. So to begin, before we can actually screen print anything, we're going to have to first build the screen itself. And of course, the foundation of a screen is a frame. And fair warning, you can buy pre-made screens, but it's a lot cheaper to make them. Now, the size of the frame is going to be dependent upon the size of the image you're wanting to print, but typically speaking, you're going to want at least 3 inches of extra space on the top and bottom of the inside of the frame. Having a little extra space on the side of the image is also very nice, but not nearly as important as it is for the top and bottom. So since the size of the image that I want to print out is about the same size as a regular piece of printer paper, that means I should be able to get away with a 15 square inch frame. So now that we have the basic dimensions, we can go ahead and cut that out of a strip of pine. It really doesn't matter the size of the pine, but for me, I'm going to be using 3/4 by 1/2 inch. Awesome, so here we have 4 14 1/4 inch long pine pieces. They're of course cut to this size, so when you put them together, they'll equal 15 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue and nail these together, then we can move the project inside. Now we're going to want to take some of our silk screen and staple it onto the frame. I'll leave a link down below for where you can buy the screening cloth. I mean, you could go into a local hobby store and search for it and buy it, but it's just a lot easier to do it online. We're going to want to staple it on nice and tight so that the screen is flat and wrinkle free. Perfect, and with that the screen is finished and ready to be used. But how exactly do we use it? Well, here I have a bottle of Speedball's photo emulsion and a bottle of Speedball's synthesizer. So what we're going to do is take the synthesizer and fill it up halfway with water, then shake it like a Polaroid. For those of you young whippersnappers out there who don't know what a Polaroid is, it's a disease of sorts you can get on your rear end. We can then dump the full bottle of synthesizer into the bottle of emulsion and mix it up until it becomes a uniform color. However, after mixing these two things together, they will harden by being exposed to light, so we'll want to do this in a somewhat dark setting. And that is looking pretty good. So now we're going to want to take this concoction and pour a relatively small amount of it onto our screen and spread it evenly without using a squeegee. Once again, of course, making sure the room is as dark as possible. Hey, Caesar. Enjoying the view? Once you're happy with how it's spread out, we'll go ahead and drop it somewhere super dark where it can remain undisturbed overnight to dry. We can then take our remaining synthesizer emulsion mix and place it into the refrigerator, which will keep it safe until we need it next.
The next morning.
Now that our screen has had some time to set up and is dry to the touch, we are ready to move on. So what we now need to do is get the image we want on our t-shirt printed onto a piece of transparency. One print only cost me like 75 cents at FedEx Kinko's. We'll then flip the image over so it's backwards and use invisible tape to tape it to the top of the screen. The reason we place it backwards is because when we go to use it, we're going to have to flip the whole thing over. And although it is not super important, we're going to want to square this up as best we can with the frame because it'll make printing the t-shirts a whole lot easier. Perfect. Now, if you remember a little while back, I said if we exposed this green solution to sunlight, it would harden. And that is exactly what we want to do now. We want to take this outside into direct sunlight so that everything except what is covered up by the letters will harden. Unfortunately, I cannot give you an exact time for how long you need to leave this in the sunlight for, because that'll differ drastically from what time of year it is and where you're at in the world. But for me, since I'm in Arizona in the dead of summer, I only need to leave it out there for about 20 or 30 seconds max. Again though, that time will differ for you, so you're going to need to experiment with it a little bit. But with all that being said, let's now take this outside and expose it, then bring it right back into our dimly lit room. Now we can go ahead and remove the transparency, and if we've done everything correctly up to this point, we should see a slight discoloration where the design was. Now I don't know how well you can see that, but the imprint is there and it looks pretty good. So now I'm going to take this to the bathtub and hose the whole thing down until the emulsion in the letters all washes out. Amazing. Now we'll just stick this in the sun one last time to make sure everything's properly hardened, then we'll give it a second to dry.
"20 minutes later."
And with that, the screen is finished and it is now finally time to print some t-shirts. So what we're going to do is take the shirt we want to print and slide onto some sort of board or rigid surface to help add some support. Here's an example of the board I use. Once the shirt is on the board and squared away, we can go ahead and give a pass with the iron to make sure there aren't any wrinkles. That should do it. We can now take this screen, flip it over so you can actually read the words, and line it up with the t-shirt. An easy way I find to do this is to take some electrical tape and mark where you want the top of the frame to sit. Then make a mark in the top center of your frame and line everything up. I find this the best way to do it, especially if you're doing multiple shirts at a time. Because with this, it's super easy to just pick up the frame and drop it down on another shirt perfectly lined up without too much trouble. So finally, I'm going to take some water-based screen printing ink and pour out a little bit right above the graphic. I'll then hold down the frame nice and tight and give 2 firm passes with the squeegee. Wait, you don't have 3 arms? Out of all sincerity though, I usually do this step on the ground so my knees can help hold it. We can now very carefully remove the screen, and we are left with our design. Now go ahead and repeat this process as necessary for all your shirts, but as soon as you're done, you're going to want to hose out this frame so that the paint doesn't dry in it.
Later that day.
Now I've left this alone for a few minutes and it is now dry to the touch, however the ink is not yet set. What that means is if we were to wash it like this, the ink would severely fade like it did on this one. But lucky for us, all we have to do to set the ink and prevent that from happening is iron the shirt. You're pretty much going to want to set your iron at the highest temperature it can do without going into a steam setting. I'm not real sure what that temperature is though, because apparently my iron was built by ancient Egyptians and only has symbols. Is that how all irons are built? That's okay though, just read the instructions on the ink you use. They should tell you everything you need to know. So after we drop on a cloth to protect the shirt, we can get busy ironing. I usually iron for about a solid minute, then take a short break, come back and do another 30 seconds. But again, just read the instructions on your paint can. And with that, your shirt is now finally complete and ready to be washed and worn. So this is the shirt we just finished before washing, and this is one I made earlier after it's been washed. As you can see, the color has held up very well and still looks fresh. With that being said though, this is a DIY method, so if you look very closely, I'm sure you can probably see a few small imperfections, but honestly, nothing much to mention. All things being considered, I'm quite satisfied with how these shirts came out and definitely look forward to wearing them. And so there you have it, how to screen print your own amazing t-shirts. But hey, thank you so much for you guys watching. I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, please feel free to hit the thumbs up and subscribe. And Lord willing, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching, and please feel free to subscribe.
And one other thing before we get started, I am officially selling these nerdily amazing TV shirts. They're not TV shirts, my land. Why can't I say T-shirts? T-shirts, like a T-Rex, like a T-bone steak, like a T... Don't say that.